Welcome back, everyone. I'm thrilled that you're joining me again for a powerful episode of Doing It Right. I'm your host, Valerie Sokolosky, and we have a remarkable guest today who embodies what I teach, executive presence. Not just in the corporate world, but this woman also shows up with just a wonderful executive presence, and she can talk about what that means everywhere she goes. Jennifer Chandler is a powerhouse managing director at Bank of America and president of Philanthropic Solutions for Bank of America Private Bank. She's here today to share some very valuable insights on a topic that affects all of us, preparing the next generation for financial success and instilling values through philanthropy. Stay tuned.
Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolosky, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Welcome, Jennifer. Let's jump in right away. It is Mother's Day week, and as a busy mom of 4 children and a supportive husband, how do you or don't you tackle overwhelmingly, to me, a schedule? I don't know how you do. How do you do that? And work-life balance, what's that?
Well, it's a great question, and I wouldn't say I have it all figured out. There's some days that go really well, and some days are a little bit more challenging. But I do look at it as such a blessing to have 4 children, and they're growing really quickly. My oldest is getting ready to go off to college, and so proud of her. But there's a couple of things I've learned from other women and other parents over the years that I try to put in place with our family. And one is just give yourself some grace. I think there were so many years early on I wanted to do everything just right and overdo all of the programs for the kids. And I've dialed a little bit of that back and then just said, you know what, let's reflect on what worked really well today. The second thing is giving responsibilities to the kids. And that's something I've learned from a lot of the great clients I've had exposure to and other leaders. And I think it gives them that grit, that resilience. So it's small things when they were little, teaching them to do their own laundry, to help, make a meal and to contribute. And there's a lot of data to that tells them, it gives the kids confidence. It tells me I feel a little bit better about giving them those responsibilities. And then I have an incredible husband. But one quote in particular comes to mind, and I think you've probably heard St. Marshall a number of times. She's someone I admire. But just a few years ago, she, in her book and on a talk, talked about crystal balls and rubber balls. She says, you're always going to have 2. And there's one that you can drop. And there's one, if you drop it, it's going to break and it's going to shatter. So that's helped me with so many key decisions, deciding, do I need to miss this recital or do I want to miss this meeting, right? Or vice versa. This is a once-in-a-lifetime meeting. This thing will happen again. So I try to be really balanced in decisions, but her guidance meant a lot to me. And I share that because I'm always learning and listening to others. So if you have advice for me, I will take it. I know you're a great mother as well, but it's a daily challenge. I also say you make time for what's important to you. So whether that's exercise or time with my wonderful husband, we make sure we spend our mornings together. We go on a walk every morning, but it's prioritizing what's important, and then the calendar tends to work out.
I am so glad that you mentioned both of those things. First of all, the tips, because those are, quote, little things, Jennifer. They're not little things that you started with your children very young. I remember when I had my children, 3 of them within 4 years, and I was overwhelmed. And I walked into another woman's home, and she was making dinner for her 3 children, one dish for each one differently, because they didn't all like the same thing. And that was the best what not to do lesson I've ever had.
Right.
Don't do that. And so I like your tips on get the kids involved right away.
For sure.
So let's talk a little bit about, Jennifer, financial literacy, which you're all about. And why is it so critical to teach children young? How do you do that?
It's critical, and I'm obviously biased being in banking, and I spent a lot of time in this space, but I have to say it's something I identified early on, well before that, even as a child myself. In our household, you had to save and earn to purchase things. And I remember the very first big toy that I had purchased on my own, and It was the process of the work and the saving up, but it was the joy. I'll never forget that one toy that I had, and it meant so much more to me because I had earned it. And so I think it's equating the work, the patience is important. So just as a child, I learned that. And then as a high school teacher, I saw a lot of that with our students before I had my children of my own, just the lack of knowledge. And then most recently, obviously, in the digital age, it is more and more important. So as you think about instant gratification and being able to order something online, if you have those means, in that scenario, I think it's, again, not really equating the value of a dollar, how to earn that dollar, how to save. And secondly, for those who are stressed over financials, that blends into the whole family. And in many cases, our parents are working, maybe they're not making that living wage or they're overextended, too much debt. That stress can carry so much burden on the whole family and children. So for me, it's one of the most rewarding things we can do. I used to support junior achievement as a volunteer, getting in there with the littles. And then, of course, at Bank of America, it's ingrained in everything we do. So we've got a number of programs to help educate children, but it's starting at the earliest age with, save, spend, and earn. And that's really important for them to understand that as early as possible. With Bank of America, it gets a little bit more complex as people grow and they get a little bit older, but we've launched some incredible programs. One is our family banking program. So you can actually have a debit card for your child. It's got some restrictions on it. And
How old?
you can start young with that one in the 7-8-year-olds, and just depends on the family. But it's got restrictions, and so you can monitor what they're doing. But you're teaching them those lessons. They get the ability to, first of all, keep that card and not lose it. Right, something as small as that, important lesson. And then again, earn, and then you can move funds over and again monitor it. They graduate out as they're ready, and we can move them up to, a regular banking account when they're ready. But we're finding a lot of families are opting into that program to get the child very comfortable. And then we layer on financial literacy. So we have something called Better Money Habits. It's web-based. They can do it from their phones or their computer and learn all kinds of lessons. So
I had no idea, and you're my bank. My goodness. Well, but that stage is gone.
I was going to say.
I am so glad, though, because I wish we had it when they weren't young. That's really amazing. I want to talk about what you think parents, I'll say it differently. Give us some resources that could support financial education outside of what you just said, things like apps or books or even courses.
There are so many options out there. And so some of our partnerships include, again, Better Money Habits is one, very easy to use. And we find in many cases, even young adults and adults need some of the basics. So whether it's saving, the importance of compounding interest and growing those 401ks. So Better Money Habits is a great one. We've also collaborated over the years with Sal Khan and the Khan Academy. Many of our folks know him for other lessons, especially during COVID. A lot of kids are online with Khan Academy. Right. But he is incredible because it can be everything from the financial markets to the basics to the more complex. And then there's a lot of podcasts, a lot of news, but make sure you're using a trusted resource. That's why I share those two. And then it's just being intentional. It's like everything else. And I know when you talk about doing it right, intentionality is important there. And it's, making sure you are actually still balancing a checkbook. Everything is digital today, but really focus on the funds you have available, budgeting, and not overextending yourself. But a lot of resources, it's making sure you're using the right ones. And then again, being intentional and thoughtful about how you're implementing it in your plan.
That's great. That's a lot of good information and good for everyone to know. Is this a separate and kind of something that other banks are not doing and you're doing maybe better than or above others?
That's a great question. And at Bank of America, we actually bank over 50% of the United States households. So when you think of that, it's incredible, but we see that as a responsibility. So yes, many banks do that, and we want that to happen. We all work collectively. We feel like the U.S. economy is an important thing, and we're a driver in that. But it's not something I would say we have full ownership of, nor would we want to. So we share best practices. I think our platform and the digital functionality is really great, and a lot of families like that and be able to do a lot from the phone. Some of the learning, so some of that's best in class, and we continue to develop that out with our technology team. But a lot of the programs we want, and again, go into public schools, we go into universities, employers, and share that information. And we just encourage them get it where they can or with their current bank and make sure, again, they're putting in the best practices practices in place.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because audience, if I'll ask you to say again, having just described that, who would someone get in touch with to get that information?
Great question. And we are a big institution, but I always say power of big, spirit of small. I took that from another colleague of mine. But we can do everything from the 1-800 number to your phone. A lot of people like the phone because maybe it's at 11 o'clock at night when you think of, I want to check on my savings. I want to learn something. Or we have a tool called Life Plan. So maybe you want to purchase that second home, or you're saving for college. So that's very much in the app to do whenever you'd like to do that. But the great thing, when I say also very local, is you can walk into any one of our financial centers. And I go to one every single week. And it's just a pleasure to do that because I see incredible professionals that are there to serve. And we even work with some nonprofits in some of our communities that may help people that need a little bit more work around repairing their credit scores and things. So we do a lot of collaboration to make sure there's enough resources as people need additional support.
What's happening in our country right now, Jennifer, just statistically, with where, quote, the average American is with financial stability?
Unfortunately, we still see a significant opportunity. I think people are waiting much longer than they should to understand the true importance of understanding the basics of financials. So we do a lot of work, and that encourages me that things are improving. I think a lot of the higher ed institutions are doing great work with young adults to make sure that they're ready when they go into that first job, that they know to save for retirement. You see the early elementary and high schools doing a lot more. While it's not required, we see a lot of them pulling us in to do those programs.
That's
so
great.
It gives me encouragement, but it's something we have to keep a close eye on for sure.
Good. I like to hear that.
We have another tool as well, So to your question, we find scenarios where maybe someone is overextended or they get in a situation that's difficult. We actually have a short-term loan for $5. It's
really
called Safe Balance, a balance
like
assist. But in that case, maybe we are finding someone that we're a little bit late to the game. We don't want them to go to a payday lender and have a difficult situation. So what we'll do is we'll balance that type of situation. We're seeing a trend, and we want to make sure we're offering that additional resources. Sometimes they're, older in life and they can use a little bit of help as well. So we're there to help guide them and give them some of the basic tools.
What I keep hearing from you, and as a customer of Bank of America, it's true that there really is a caring.
Yes.
And when I walk into the bank I go to, the one over here locally, I have to say, everyone that is there, you need to know this, boss. They welcome me. They always say my name, and it feels like a relationship that old banking people used to have in every single bank. So thank you for still having that. Let's get on philanthropy, because you are Miss Philanthropic person. I know that. And yes, it's a wonderful way for living for others. It's an outward rather than an inward mentality, isn't it? So tell me a little bit about the aspect of getting out there for others. Why aren't more people doing that? And here's where I'm coming from. I've mentioned nonprofits and volunteering and things for a long time to different people, and I get different answers. And one of them is I don't have time.
Right.
Talk about that.
Well, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. You make time for what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you do hear that. The good thing is we do see a lift. We do our study of philanthropy every 2 years, and we are seeing that volunteerism continue to be strong in the U.S. And the next generation also. They want to get out. They want to involve their children. They want to volunteer. So it is about making time for what's important to you. And I use examples even at Bank of America. We actually allow for 2 hours of paid time a week to go out and volunteer. And it's not just something we say or put on our benefits page, but we coordinate events. And we'll ask that we don't push for, but they want to come. We'll say we're going to Special Olympics. I actually have people out at Special Olympics right now. And I always say you come back more refreshed and a better teammate and employee, and we're all busy. So we don't force it, but I think by making it very convenient, offering really great opportunities, more people get out and do it. And with our children, it's something we have also made sure it's something they get a lot out of. What I've found is, sometimes there's a drive or something at school, but the child's not really equating it to the needs. So it's really important, I think, in volunteerism to get with the clients when you can, or get close to the mission and understand the why of what you're doing. But it's important to us as a family. It's important in the work I do. And of course, there's time, and then there's treasure. And giving financially is, a great way to give back as well. And certainly many of our clients are doing that. So in our work at Bank of America, we're making sure they have the right tools to do that, whether it's a donor advised fund or a family foundation. And importantly, we want to make sure they have a plan and they're not just reacting to each request that comes their way, but that they have a broader strategy.
Planning is good.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about a personal situation, tagging onto exactly what you said, Jennifer, and it goes to philanthropy within the family, and how when a family is involved, it just reinforces the family values with the children and the cohesiveness you've talked about and the collaboration, all the things that I know you're about. And a situation where in my own family, a young man decided he would start a soccer camp for underprivileged children. And it has become bigger than a bread box. And it's actually been something that has brought this young man some publicity. And you say that was not nice, but he didn't go after that. The family and he became so collaborative. It was fun.
Right.
I watched this for years. So the values, I think, is something that means a great deal, and the impact that it has on a family's identity. And what about a legacy, the family legacy?
It's so true. And it's the beauty of what we do. I've been at the bank 25 years now, and I talk a lot about having this window and this seat to see some of the most incredible families across the country. I was just with several at something we call Family Enterprise Forum. And some of these are large companies you would know, and we're with the third and fourth generation. And then other scenarios were with someone who maybe moved to the United States just a few years ago and started a company in their first generation. But to the family, I love hearing the stories around how they leverage philanthropy to bring the family together. So in some cases, they'll have one family foundation, and they use once a year to meet. I had a client this week that said, the young kids actually have to do a PowerPoint presentation and present their project to the family. And it's so much fun. They said the kids put a lot of work into it. Maybe it's pets or homelessness or whatever it may be. But think about the lesson in that. And that can be done at any size. And I think that's the beauty, is I get to see some of the largest, most complex with, buildings named after them. But it's the process and the enjoyment they get out of it. And then I see it at the smallest levels of every client we serve. The generosity is just a blessing to see it, and the humility. So many of our clients do that and give right back with no anticipated recognition. So it's fun, but definitely a way also for corporations to bring their employees together around particular areas that may resonate with their teammates.
Well, Zig Ziglar used to say, Jennifer, when you give, you get.
That's
and that's
right.
so true. What about estate planning? I know it's extremely important for the next generation. So what are some of the basics of estate planning people should think about, and the role of trusts?
Right. It goes right back to the beginning where we talked about financial literacy, and it starts with education. The other thing is starting early in the conversation. Too many people wait too long, tail end of life, and you just never know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, we run into scenarios where there's not a plan. Maybe they think they had a will, but it wasn't well written, and maybe an attorney wasn't involved. So we always say, bring in the experts, bring in partners, start early. We also recommend communicating. We have the pleasure as one of the largest trust companies to be the partner administering trust, and we're reading through a document. But because of our long tenure, in many cases, we knew the matriarch or the patriarch. So we're not just reading the document, but we understand the family, we understand the values. But when I say communicate and talk, that makes it much easier for the next generation to understand the strategy. So maybe for your family, having a significant amount of your estate going to philanthropy is important to you. If that's communicated through all those years of the family getting together around philanthropy, that's a lot easier for the next generation to understand. There's dynamics across siblings. There's always the question of how much and when do I give my children? And as a mother, that's something I think about. I think I mentioned budgeting and being the right age to acquire wealth. So being really thoughtful around things of that nature written into the trust are important. And then, of course, all the tax aspects as well. Just the earlier you start and with a trusted partner that can keep up with tax changes and specific needs that you may have is helpful. Lastly, we always say, think about that estate. And in some cases, we name a friend, we name a loved one, and people don't understand every step involved with settling an estate. So before you ask a friend to do that great thing for you, we actually have a long checklist we can show you of just the complexity and, in many cases, the pressure that puts on someone. So in some cases, we find a corporate trustee, like the banker or others, maybe an avenue or, others to bring around, or co-trustees can make that a little bit smoother. But it's something to also think about that we recommend for our families.
Well, it's not only something to think about, it's something to do. And I know too many families that just don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Just don't want to talk about it. I may not be here.
Right.
And that doesn't serve well for those that are left.
And even digital assets, if you think about the complexity of being able to log in, a lot of information is online and people don't plan ahead around having the right credentials and thinking through with family members the right way to access information. Back in the day, you just had the one document. So it's something when you think about digital assets as well, just making sure you've covered all your bases.
So Jennifer, I'm just thinking, did you say there's a checklist of things? How can people get that? I think that's great.
Absolutely. It's on our website, and other providers have it as well. But it is a good tool because it's also, if you're considering someone else, but it makes you realize these are the things I need to be thinking about. And I always laugh. Nobody wants to talk about, death and taxes. It's just the reality. So again, the earlier you're doing that, it's more comfortable, I find. And it's just part of the planning process. It goes back to prenups or just things that are important to the family. I always say you want to do that before the person's here. You want to have a family strategy in place. So it's not about the person, right? It's about, what are my objectives? What's my legacy? I've done all this work to build whatever wealth I have, and what am I want my legacy to be? And so that's really important. The other thing is the right vehicles. So we just had some research last year, and we see about 54% of families are looking to structure some kind of planning vehicle, in particular around philanthropy. So whether it's the donor advised fund or the foundation. So with this great wealth transfer to the next generation and to foundations, more and more people are setting up those structures. So just another example, start early and be thoughtful around the tools you're using.
So I'll just, taking it personally again, years ago, I wish I had had any tools. And so thankfully, you've got a checklist, you've got the tools, and all people have to do is go online and, or better yet, walk into a Bank of America place and get someone to sit down with you.
We're happy to do that.
And who would you ask for if I didn't know you and I walked in?
That's a great question. And we've got a number of great colleagues all across the financial centers. Any one of them you can ask, and they're going to get you to the right expert. We have everything, what we call a financial solutions advisor to financial advisors. With our private bank, we have trust officers. So we have a whole group of teammates and some that specialize in this area. But the great thing with the bank is you can walk through any of those doors, and we're going to get you in the right hands.
And that's true. I personally have had that happen. I need this, and it's, where do I go? And you go right here.
Exactly.
And it worked out. Before we wrap up, Jennifer, for those who want to dive deeper into these essential topics, what's the best way for our listeners or watchers to connect with you or someone that you recommend? And you said, yes, you can walk into the bank. But if someone wants to pick up the phone and call a local bank, what would they ask for? Whether it's financial literacy information or philanthropy, or financial literacy or philanthropy, or estate planning. I walk in and I just know I need someone.
Right.
What's my question?
We like to provide choices. So there's a number of ways you can do that. With the Bank of America app, you can actually set an appointment. And you can be as detailed as you want to be at that appointment. And someone will likely call you back and say, I see that you want to come in tomorrow to talk about your estate plan. That's great. Let me ask you a couple of questions to make sure we have the right person.
Okay.
And that we use a lot because, again, sometimes it's 11 o'clock at night. You wake up and you think, okay, I've got to do this now. We see a lot of that. Of course, walking through the center. And then actually for our wealth side on our website, we have some great tools where you can search by location and interest and your experience, whatever it may be, and we'll align you with an advisor there as well. So plenty of options.
You've got it all covered.
We're always improving. We want to make it as easy as possible. So.
I always appreciate getting advice from you and from my bank, Bank of America. And audience, you can see on the banner how to reach the people you need to reach. And just say it for us. If someone wants to reach out to their local bank, what do they ask for? And we'll put it on the banner.
Well, thank you. So just bankofamerica.com, and you're able to search by the location there. We'll get you to the closest one. Or again, if you're already a Bank of America client right within your phone, you can make an appointment there.
That makes it so simple. I want to be sure that we cover, before we end up here, Jennifer, some of the things that you hold deep in your heart. We talked about collaboration and not going it alone, of course. I loved something you just said before the show. Go slow to go fast.
Right.
I want to end with that. What do you mean?
Well, it's, if anybody who knows me, I move pretty quickly, sometimes talk too fast. And so while I'm efficient, I like to get a lot of things done. When I say go slow to go fast, that's when I'm thinking about an important decision and being strategic. And a lot of those important decisions come across our desk in any given day. So maybe it's something for our client, something for our community. So while we're moving fast and we're efficient, and when things like that come across the desk, we're going to take more time, bring in other counsel, bring in experts to make the right decision. Mm-hmm. It also relates to the broader strategy. Everything we do at Bank of America, we reinvest back into the engine, whether it's our technology or our process or taking out steps. And it's a pretty rigorous process in how we do that. So that's where I say, as we reflect on our business, how we get better every day, that's where we pause. We bring in a lot of data. We look, we dive in, we invest the time there. And then once that machine's going, it just goes faster and faster. So we go slow to go fast. And it's something in my personal life as well, sometimes with the kids and others. I'll pause for a minute and say, I know this is important to you, but let's pause. Let's do the work now and put in some thought, and then we'll go fast when we're ready.
That's great advice, Mom, for Mother's Day. Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the show. These are really important things that people need to know, and some of them I didn't know when I should have known long ago. So listen up, listeners and watchers. If this kind of information is important to you and you learn something from this show, because we always try to do it right, would you do me a favor? Would you just make a comment on the comment part of this show, or better yet, share Doing It Right? Hit that darn red button and subscribe. It means everything to me, because then I know that what I'm doing is impactful and relevant. So thank you for that very much. And my Valerieism, by the way, for today is this: when it comes to money, ignorance is not bliss. When you don't know, it can hurt you. That's so wise. I wish I'd thought of it, but it was actually from a woman named Sandra Simmons, and I'm going to say it one more time. When it comes to money, ignorance is not bliss. When you don't know, it can hurt you. So, until next time, keep striving to do it right. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically